Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Positive Luxury's open house here at the fabulous Home House. It's great to see so many familiar faces and some new ones too. Thank you for making the time to be here. I know how busy everyone is, and it really does mean a lot. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm Jamie Moore, Managing Director at Positive Luxury. This morning is about something that we really love doing here, bringing together the brightest and best to have honest, forward-looking conversations about where luxury is heading. It does feel like each time we host one of these sessions, a new backdrop of global uncertainty ramps up another notch. In the past few weeks have been no exception. But I think that's exactly why this matters all the more. Our goal is to inspire and shape a more resilient, transparent and trusted luxury industry. And it isn't just about protecting profit and brand value, it's about strengthening foundations of business, protecting people's livelihoods across the global supply chain. And at the start of the year, we published a report, Luxury at a Crossroads, and it was based on interviews with leaders across the industry. The message was clear. Transparency is now an operational necessity. Sustainability is becoming a value engine, even if that sounds a bit like an AI-inspired phrase. And trust is becoming the new currency of luxury. And trust has to be earned. So it has to be earned through transparency, through proof, through data, and through supply chain visibility, rigorous certifications. These are all great foundations. But just as important is how you communicate that to the consumer. And trust is built in how consumers experience your brand, how they engage with it, build meaning, and ultimately whether they choose to buy and be loyal beyond that. And that gap between what brands are doing and what consumers actually feel and believe and how they act is something, especially my background from marketing, is really interesting, and I'm particularly looking forward to exploring that this morning. And it's also something that Positive Luxury we're asked more and more about. We're doing so many more projects from clients about sustainability comms-led projects. So I'm delighted to be joined by two people who bring complementary perspectives on exactly this topic. First, Katie Richards, Head of Sustainability at Monica Vinader. Katie brings wider experience that includes food and beverage, in strategy development, sustainability communications, and responsible sourcing to the jewellery sector. And she leads the brand's ESG strategy, global certifications, including the Positive Luxury Butterfly Mark, with a strong focus on sourcing and improving traceability, transparency, and data-driven communication. And joining Katie is Fiona Harkin, Head of Foresight at the Future Laboratory. Fiona brings 2 decades of experience at leading agencies as content director, as a journalist, shaping insight and strategy for forward-thinking businesses with a cross-sector lens spanning fashion, tech, media, and digital commerce. And she brings expert insights into how luxury consumers are behaving, what they're looking for in 2026 and beyond. So please give our panellists a warm welcome. And then enough for me, and I'll get into the conversation. So Fiona, I'll start with the bombshell. In your latest report, Rebranding Sustainability, you say sustainability as we know it is now dead. What did you mean by that? And can you kind of unpack it from what that means from a consumer perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a provocative statement, designed that way. But it goes back to the reason why I even wanted to produce this report. I did, in particular, I wanted to produce this report. It's a topic very close to my heart. I've written about sustainability since the beginning of my career. As well. And what started to happen was, with our partners and clients at the Future Laboratory, when we onboarded them and brought them into the business, they would say yes, they'd tick a box on what was of interest to them, a challenge to them, and they'd tick sustainability, but then they just didn't know what it meant anymore. And particularly as we've seen this decline in focus on ESG strategies alongside DEI strategies, they don't seem to understand, well, what does sustainability mean for us anymore? And in fact, I think it's come to mean so much that means nothing at all.
Interrupting. Can you talk louder? There's a lot of noise coming from outside.
So I don't know if the microphone was...
Can you close that door?
Can you hear me okay now? Is that okay? No, that's fine. So we thought we would look at sustainability, repositioning it through the lens of brand strategy. But it's also a consumer issue as well. And I think in the report there's one of the stats that's really interesting. I think it's from Boston Consulting Group, and I think it says that 80% of consumers say that sustainability matters, but only about 1 to 7% of them continually apply that mindset to their purchases and their shopping. So this say-do gap is a yawning gap. So we wanted to look at, well, what does sustainability mean right now for your brand? Keeping in mind that that's probably better. Is that all right? Sorry. Yeah. I thought I was speaking really quietly. Where was I with the report? Yeah, with consumers. Keeping in mind this massive say-do gap, but also that with a lot of brands, you probably already have a sustainability story in many ways, and it's just now how you reframe that. So one of the key things that we wanted to focus on was maybe actually this is a story about legacy, not so much sustainability as we knew it, and that's why it's dead.
Katie, anything?
I guess I would just add from a brand perspective, I think it's really interesting, and I mean, we know we're speaking to an audience of knowledgeable people in this room as Positive Luxury members. You've all got sustainability woven into the business that you work in. I think for a Monica Vinader customer, sustainability in itself is not necessarily a reason why they would buy our product. I mean, none of us are going out and buying a jewellery product because it is sustainable. We're buying it because it's our mum's birthday. It's actually my mum's birthday today. So we might be buying it because it's our mum's birthday, but we're not buying it because it is sustainable. The reason why you might then return to the same brand again and again is because it aligns with your values. So it's actually less about, I think, aligned with what you were saying. It's less about saying this product is sustainable and more about saying this product has great quality, it's made with great craftsmanship, it's responsible, it makes you feel like it aligns with the values that you have. It doesn't make you buy the product in the first place. I think that's probably quite similar to a lot of the brands in the room. You know, people aren't buying your products because they're sustainable, but they might come back because you are aligned with their values.
So I guess luxury is often sort of synonymous with heritage, with craft, with exclusivity. How has sustainability influenced what luxury value means?
Well, I think those qualities that you talk about, that craftsmanship, the provenance, those are qualities that align themselves with sustainability in many ways. You're talking about rarefied materials or rarefied access. I think luxury has this opportunity to become, and already is, to become this ESG champion in a way. And that's because I think with luxury it's much easier for the customer, for the sustainability, it's not a buy-in, it becomes an expected part of the experience. And as luxury becomes far more experiential as well, that becomes really important.
Katie, where does it sit alongside your kind of luxury values at Monica?
I think when we think about sustainability alongside luxury, it is just an expectation of our customers. I think if you're buying a product that you know is a cheap product, you might expect that product is not going to have a certain level of value attributed to it. You might have read that fashion brands use sweatshops, for example. So if you go to a really low price fashion brand to buy an item, there's a kind of inherent knowledge in the back of your mind for most consumers. I'm not saying for all consumers, but for most consumers that exists, I think. I think that's well enough understood. I think with luxury, and certainly this is how we position it, there is an expectation that we are already meeting certain standards. So it's not enough to not speak about it at all. And anything that you do want to say, you have to have evidence for that. I think for us, the big thing has been traceability. In the jewellery industry, especially in certain products, for example, coloured gemstones are a great example within the Monica Vinader supply chain. There is an inherent lack of traceability. So that has been a really big focus for us. And I think that is something, and traceability I think is a kind of buzzword that we throw around a lot, but we use that as an evidence-backed way to say we really mean what we say. And I think it's worth also saying that our traceability product passport actually has really poor click-through rates. I'm not sure my press team would want me to say that, but it does. And the reason that it's on there is not because we want people to necessarily be looking at it all the time, but we want to show that the evidence is available there for people to know. You can see where your products come from, you can see the types of certifications they have, and we share that very openly if someone is interested to know. It just so happens that our customers are not that interested to know. I don't think that is a lack of expectation, because as I say, I think the expectation is we've kind of ticked those boxes. I think it's a lack of potentially time, and it's also, I mean, we all know we're customers, we're busy. It's also, if you know it's there, actually I don't need to dig into the detail because I know it's there. So again, I think that speaks to the fact that this is an expectation of our customers, not necessarily something that we need to be kind of shouting from the rooftop about at all moments.
And you mentioned traceability, and you've really trailblazed digital passports at Monica Vinader, and obviously they're coming for fashion and other sectors. What would you say the issues around the passport are, or the opportunities for your brand? Has it been a challenge? Has it been a risk, or has it been an opportunity?
I'd say, I mean, of course there is the risk of showing. I think actually the risks that were discussed internally were more about showing our competitors where all of our sites were, rather than our customers. And actually that's not really transpired as a risk. To be honest, we all know where each other produce anyway, because you go to their factories and you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's from XYZ brand. So it's not like, it's not like that's a secret anyway. I think the risk becomes where you would have traceability but didn't have the standards in place. And I think that's probably, with the coming legislation around digital product passports, I think that's what's going to trip brands up. It's about making sure that you're really confident in the standards that your suppliers have before you share them openly. So, for example, we will always have extended audit processes with our suppliers before they are shared. And that's the most difficult for us when it comes to coloured gemstone mines. There could be, between a coloured gemstone mine, especially in artisanal mining, there could be 11 steps before it gets to cutting and polishing, which is our tier 2 supplier, so that's not even our first tier supplier. So we're talking a level of opaque nature in that many trading steps. And so there are lots of different things I could talk about with that, but I think the key thing is making sure that that mine at that very end of that train has the right standards. And we created a bespoke mining audit in partnership with SCS, who are a global audit firm, I'm sure many of you are familiar, so that when we shared those mines on our product passport, we were mitigating some of that risk because we felt confident that that was in place. We've similarly just worked on a project on pearls, and at the moment we have traceability back to some pearl farms, but we're working on what the ESG standards need to be in that space before we do put that on our product passport. So I think for me that's the risk that I see with this new digital product passport world, is making sure that those standards are the case, because we could all just put our suppliers on a website. But it's the security that you know that those standards are being met first, I think, that is the real key.
Thanks. And you mentioned there that consumers aren't necessarily clicking into the passports in great numbers. Fiona, do you think there's a real opportunity to engage luxury consumers with tech and passports?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, broadly speaking, anything that connects consumption with production is a good thing. It adds to the value proposition. But it's what I was talking about before about legacy. It shifts the product from the nowness to a forever product. And we're particularly right now seeing a lot of value in digital, in DPPs around resale and repair and circularity. And even then, sort of moving into AI as well, how you can perhaps build in information that starts with a DPP into, well, your product might need some TLC right now, it might need repair, it might be scheduled. It folds into this kind of new digital layer of anticipatory service that I think luxury is primed to take up.
You mentioned AI there. How do you think AI is, we all talk about it, it's changing the consumer experience?
Well, it's wild out there. It's this battle for not only discovery, discovery and attention for consumers. So we talk about now agentic commerce, and we're doing a lot more sort of work on this at the Future Laboratory, and that shift to these agents that are not just helping consumers find products, but they're actually going to be making purchasing decisions for them. So brands have really got to start looking, it sounds at their tech stack in a way, but also, well, yeah, how do you have your agent? But also, how are you going to be putting information out there that will surface your catalogue, your brand information for those multitude of agents out there that are wrapping service, product decision around the individual. In the end, AI is about personalisation. So it makes it slightly less scary when you think of it in that way.
Thanks. Katie, is there anything you can add from Monica's point of view?
I think we haven't yet got to a stage where we've seen the full customer impact of using AI, if I'm being totally honest. I think as a business, we're really starting to utilise AI in the way that we support our customer service, for example. But from a sustainability perspective, it's not yet something that I would say has truly hit. I would just say there is a watch out for all of us as brands that AI is inherently flawed. My colleague Hannah and I are both here today, and Hannah and I were looking the other day at B Corp certified jewellery brands via AI, and it said that Monica Vinader was B Corp certified. We're not B Corp certified. So, that we all know that there are things like this that come up, and it's also, I think and that's not because just to be clear, that's not because we have ever said that we are B Corp certified, just to be clear, because we haven't. But I think it's also how do we as brands make sure that whatever information is feeding these AI platforms is correct. And I don't know that any of us have necessarily worked out what that looks like yet. So I'd say we're definitely utilising the tools internally, but in terms of sustainability, I think the jury's a bit out on how we best utilise it to help make sure that our customers do have all the information that we need, to Fiona's point.
In terms of communicating to customers, obviously many brands find it a big challenge to communicate about sustainability full stop, whether it's kind of oversharing their information or greenwashing, greenhushing. How do you think companies can embed sustainability into their communications and storytelling sort of more seamlessly with confidence and integrity?
Yeah, this is one of the issues that we do touch on in the Rebranding Sustainability Report. And I do think luxury brands have to get a little bit better at being local as well. And that's not just sort of tweaking your strategy just for the local market. You know, I think in a world where people are getting tired of the sort of the mass experience, the generic experience, this issue of rootedness is becoming more important, and specifically for luxury as well. And you can go back to some of the old luxury houses, say Hermes or any brand with an atelier, and how they market that and speak about that, and sort of, you know, position their production close to those ateliers and communicate that globally. And I think that's one of the key things where you can talk about what you do as a brand without always labelling it as sustainability. That's one of the main things that I'd say with that. But you know, it's not. It's that shift from not making sustainability your USP. It could almost be quite damaging for your brand if you do that now. You're looking at the inherent values that you have as a brand.
Katie, how does it work at Monica Vinader between sustainability and brand teams? And are you feeling any external pressure from legislation coming?
Interestingly, we are not in all legislation, but in a lot of legislation we're a bit too small to be impacted by some of the legislation. I think from a regulations perspective, what this is going to give us as sustainability teams is a really good framework to give to our brand teams within which they can then work. And I actually think that's really beneficial. I think we've been lacking that a little bit in sustainability in the last, 5-10 years, when people have started to talk about greenwashing, but we've not been able necessarily to say, do say this or don't say that. I think with pieces of legislation like the ECGT, which is EU legislation, I think that then says we can't use unspecific claims anymore. So we can't say things like, we're a sustainable jewellery brand, which I've been trying not to get our brand team to say for a while. But sometimes you end up in these situations where, someone doesn't see it, it's not approved, and then it ends up on the bottom of an email, or, and sometimes these things happen, where things slip through the net. So I think what legislation will do is definitely give us kind of guardrails, which I think will be easier for those of us working in sustainability, and hopefully I think easier for our brand colleagues, in that I think sometimes, I don't know how many of you work in this sustainability function or own a sustainability function, but I think often we're seen as the ones that come in and say, no, you can't do that, or no, you cannot say that, or no, it's not okay to do this. So we're kind of the ones that take away all of the brand team's fun, whereas I think with legislation it gives us a little bit more flexibility to say, these are the guardrails, say what you want within these guardrails. And I think that's actually a freedom that we haven't been able to give to those teams before. In terms of how we work together, I'd say because sustainability at Monica Vinader, the way that we talk about sustainability, as I said, is really linked to the quality of the product, the services that we offer, the craftsmanship that goes into it, which is kind of synonymous for how we talk about responsible sourcing, and then this piece around traceability and our product passport. Those things are inherently things that our brand team would be talking about anyway. So it's more when we're doing, say, a specific campaign for a specific project that we might more lean in to support them to make sure that the content is correct, rather than leaning in on an everyday email where I think the emphasis of sustainability exists without necessarily calling it out, which is what I think you were saying earlier, Fiona.
Sorry, yeah. I think that's an interesting point, because I don't think the consumer expects perfection at all, but they won't accept contradiction. And yeah, I think that sounds like what you're trying to put in place.
Great, and I think I totally agree, and Positive Luxury agree on looking at regulation like ECGT as being a great opportunity for allowing brands to really go out confidently and communicate about the sustainability within some kind of fair guidelines. but I think it's a real opportunity moving forward and not something that's going to be negative. In terms of, we talk about different teams, obviously marketing and brand often spend money, but sustainability is often framed as a real cost centre for a business. From your perspectives, are we seeing clear evidence that it's driving growth and brand value?
I think it's really difficult to link. I mean, we can all sit here and say we can do our best to link it to growth. It's really difficult on a day-to-day basis for me to go to our senior leadership team and say, we did this in sustainability and that has equaled this business growth. I just think that is inherently very difficult. I think where it helps is actually where you can have external bodies or research that says, we've looked at X number of businesses who talk about sustainability in this way, and we've seen that they are growing X% more than their competitors who aren't talking about sustainability or don't have those values linked in with them. That's the kind of statistic I would be using internally, because, I mean, as a P&L line, we do sit in a cost centre. I mean, there isn't anything, there's not much else I can say on that other than that is where we sit. But I do think there is inherent value, because otherwise businesses wouldn't continue to invest in this. I also think, to the point you were saying about legacy, I think inherently people want to work for brands that are doing this. So I think we're lucky in that people that work for Monica Vinader generally really care about sustainability. They might not necessarily have time in their day jobs always to be focused on it as much as we are, and that is something that we're always working on, the internal engagement piece with our teams. But I think inherently, if you've built a brand with values, then the people that work there are drawn to that business because they share similar values to that. And I think that adds an intangible value, and I know that's not exactly the question you asked, but I would say I think that is important as well. And that's throughout the whole business as well, whether that's, your CEO or whether that's the newest person in your team.
I don't think it's an intangible value. I think it is, well, it will become more tangible, but I think it's, when it comes to the value of sustainability, it's whether you want to be part of the feel-good economy or the results economy. For a while we've talked about the experience economy when it comes to luxury as well, and that move away from the product and into other areas like wellness and longevity. But really, and you started this sort of talking about all of the things that are happening in the world at the moment, and I think we've had enough. Has everybody had enough yet? I think we have. And so putting my futurist head on and looking further down the line, and excuse me, because my head is buried in a large project we're doing at the moment about global drivers, which is at the core of our methodology. But this will be about how you leave customers feeling at the end of the interaction with your brand, your service, or your product, and that has incredible value.
Thank you. So, looking to the future, if we're having this discussion in 3 years' time, what will a responsible brand look like, in your opinion? What does a world look like where better choices feel normal for consumers and easier?
Yeah, well, it's when the better choice is the obvious choice. I'd like to see some of the weight lifted off consumers. And I think in part legislation is doing this. For too long we were told that every one of your choices as an individual consumer is going to make a difference, and then that was kind of ripped apart when you're told, well, actually no, the whole recycling your plastic was actually just a ruse from BP, and all of these things where there's a whiplash, a consumer whiplash, and they bear this incredible weight of choice. It is a burden, and yet at the same time, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer for 2026,
trust in our traditional organisations and institutions has just tanked, and rightly so. But actually then consumers are looking more to brands for this kind of leadership as well, and it puts an awful lot of pressure on brands. You are taking up, you're a bridger of all sorts of divides, you're this paragon of sustainable virtue, but there is opportunity there. And I think that's if you can focus on that lifting of the burden of the future consumer, and then you're on the right track, for sure.
Katie, obviously you're very much on the right track, I would say. What can you add to that?
Look, I don't have a crystal ball necessarily, and when we talked about this in advance, I was saying sometimes it doesn't feel like there's much to be hopeful about in the current global economy. I think if, as a business, you can provide the same or better product with better standards, so that and when I say standards, I mean sustainability standards, with better quality, with better protection of the people that are working in your supply chains, with better approaches to protecting the environment, investing in nature, reducing your carbon footprint. If you can do all of that, whilst also offering a product that people are willing potentially to pay more for, we're all luxury brands, and actually a better quality product than the alternatives on the market, then I think we do both, and we take away that burden of consumer choice. They buy the product that they like the best, that's the best for them, but that is also the most sustainable. I think that's where we as brands should be aiming to get to, and I think to come full circle, that kind of speaks to what we were saying at the beginning, which is sustainability isn't necessarily your lead message, but it is one that underpins everything that you do and that actually provides that better quality product that your consumer wants to buy. So that's where I hope we get to in 3 years, but 3 years isn't very far away, so I don't know if we'll get there. But
Great, thank you. Well, coming back to that full circle moment, I think it's a great opportunity now. We'll pause and open. We've got 5 minutes, I think, for questions from the floor. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I will come and pass my microphone.
Hello. Hi, Fiona here. Question for Fiona, really fascinating. You said at one point about if you're a brand and one of your USPs is sustainability, that could be problematic. I was interested in that because then we were also talking about how sustainability is quite a big part of brands like proposition to their employees. And also I'm thinking, politically, the kind of backlash against terms like net zero, yet surveys of voters show the vast majority of people care about climate change, issues like that. So I was kind of interested, particularly does the word sustainability in particular problematic? And if so, why? And perhaps how could it be reframed?
Yeah, I think it might run out of batteries.
It's on orange now.
We will get there.
Sorry, can you hear me?
So yes, I think it's those phrases like net zero that require this buy-in. Oh, I have to buy into that. I have to opt into that. That I think is the thing that is perhaps turning consumers off, because then they also really don't know what it means, or if it's achievable, and it all just becomes confusing. But one of the examples that I use is actually quite a personal one from a friend of mine, and she worked for major FMCG brands producing mass market body care. So she started a brand called No Planet B in Germany, and it was the height of purpose branding, and they had fully recycled and recyclable packaging and the product, and it had a very purpose-led image. The brown sort of pharmacy kind of style bottle, and the sort of like graffiti branding, and it was bought by DM in Germany, which is the equivalent of Boots in Germany, and it's now gone through 3 rebrands. And they had to make some compromises along the way. First of all, the packaging failed. It wasn't of a good quality. But also, people weren't buying into that. And what they focused on in the end was the story, which was some of these were left over or forgotten about ingredients that were uplifted. And in the end, now, if you walk into a DM store and you see no Planet B, it doesn't look like a sustainable brand. It looks like, well, better than a good brand, but I'm biased. But actually, the smells are different. The packaging is slightly different. And now it's hit its stride. It's become a success. And I think it's because they didn't make sustainability the main story. They made efficacy the main story. And that's in the end what people bought. And then the tipping point was the fact that actually this is a really good product that would make you feel good on the inside as well as the outside.
Thank you. Any other questions?
One thing I've never understood is why nobody discusses the subject of waste in the context of sustainability, etc. Waste is the biggest waste of money, waste of resources in the world. And I don't think as consumers we're encouraged not to waste. And often the things that are very good quality last a lot longer and are not wasted. They're used for a much longer time. I think we're very much a throwaway society still, which is sad.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I think one of at the end of our report, we look at the future sustainability of consumers, future personas. And one of those is built around that idea of really still only buying what you need. But again, it's not the consumer choice, it's actually how the brands decide to serve that up to clients. So whether it's a coffee company, and it's controversial if you talk about coffee pods, but just enough, just what you need, rather than building in that waste into the product.
Katie, insights on waste that Monica?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. I think obviously if people are buying especially high quality products or products like ours and then they were throwing them in the bin, I'd be quite surprised, but they could be in theory, and that would be a massive waste of resources. Actually, we have seen in the last year an uptick on the number of consumers that are using our recycling programme, both in stores and online. And I think that does speak to a consumer realisation that waste is something that's within their control, especially for these higher quality products that have inherent value. I agree, and I think that consumers agree. Certainly, I think we will see that as a trend, as you've said, in future. The more that consumers become knowledgeable about what they can do, waste is very much something that they can control and is absolutely part of, and should be part of business strategies on sustainability, whether that's circularity, whether that's on buying better and buying less. I think it will depend on your business as to what you focus on there, but yeah, I agree.
Time for one or two more questions. I don't think the microphone's going to work, so if you
I'll
can
try and
speak
talk
up.
loudly. My question's a little towards you, Katie, actually, and around your packaging and sustainable packaging. And it was really understanding, do you have any challenges when it comes to sourcing sustainable materials? What do you look for and what do you want your packaging to do and achieve? Is it, to be recycled or to be kept? What do you look for around that?
Is this working? No. I'll just speak loudly.
So packaging is an sorry, trying to project and not doing a good job. No, it's okay. So I would say packaging is definitely an interesting one. So most of our packaging is sourced recyclable, but then we do have pouches inside our boxes which are not recyclable. I'll be honest, as a sustainability person working with brand teams on packaging, this is a big challenge. What we would say is those pouches are used to be, or are meant to be reusable, and that's how we've designed them to be. Do I think that our customers always keep them and reuse them, especially people who are buying lots of jewellery? No, I don't think they are. In our offices, we have return schemes where that packaging will then get basically sent back to our warehouse and reused. But we don't yet have that for customers. It's actually something that we're considering doing, because actually most of the time you open it, you put an item on, and then you put it in your jewellery box at the end of the day. So I think there is partly what you're saying about the sourcing, and I actually think the sourcing part's easier than the what does your customer do with it. And speaking to the point on waste, I think there's some really interesting things that we could be doing in that space as well. But happy to chat more about sourcing and stuff. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
One more question.
On the waste theme, as it's here, do you think the digital product passport can really help with that in terms of, obviously there's a traceability upstream, but then there's the downstream, and giving customers that some people might not know, as in you can return this to one of our stores or concession stands, and really enabling the circularity more.
Yeah, interesting. We don't use our digital product passport for downstream at all at the moment, to be honest. And it's also, with the legislation that's coming for fashion, that it's quite different for jewellery, because obviously we couldn't have a QR code on a ring. There's not space. There's not, it's very different. Whereas with fashion, that the QR codes are going to go on swing tags, and so that makes it slightly more, it's slightly easier. I'm not saying it's easier, I'm just saying it's slightly easier to trace. So at the moment for us, it's very much a supply chain backed product passport. But we were talking actually about how I think in some products, not necessarily for us, but what will, especially in luxury goods, having had a specific product passport linked to that product will actually be really helpful for the resale market, because actually it gives you that traceability. That's what you were.
Yeah, you get that idea of provenance that you perhaps associated with an artwork. So now you've actually got investment firms investing in a business that is taking Birkin bags and refurbishing them and selling them for profit. But that's becoming an investment model. But the interest in repair and resale is huge. I mean, at the moment I love the meme on wherever, Instagram, wherever you are, of John Galliano going through the archives at Zara. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's hilarious, probably him. But he's actually picking through a pile of discarded clothing on some garbage heap. So this is John Galliano through the archives. And I think actually what it does show is that question about, well, where's the value come from in a partnership like that? It's no longer the brand, the designer name. People are going to be looking at the materials, where they come from and where they're going to go. And it's not going to have that lasting value if actually it's made of really crap material, coming from a really crappy source, sorry to say. And that will be called out. I can't remember the name of the account, but there's one woman who walks through the high street stores, particularly Marks and Spencer or brands like Oliver Bonus, and absolutely tears apart their claims and just goes through the labels on the clothes. And it's absolutely fascinating to see that this is happening, even with food waste. And this is a brand that has the Plan A philosophy, and it's like, well, are you really sticking to it? So yeah, it's a big part of it, is that the waste or the reuse issue.
Sounds like we've got a theme for our next open house session. but we have run out of time. So thank you so much, Fiona and Katie, for being so generous with your time and insights. It's been really wonderful talking to you this morning. Thank you to Home House, thank you to the Positive Luxury team for putting this event on, and thank you all very much for coming this morning and taking time to join us. We'll let you get on with your day. If it sparks any ideas or conversations you want to continue, we're going to be around for a little bit longer. But otherwise, thank you very much.